Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Welcome back to Southeast Radio's Business Matters with me, Karl Fitzpatrick. Well, Duncan Graham has worked with some of the biggest brands in Irish retail, but he has recently been appointed as the new Managing Director of Retail Excellence Ireland, at probably the most turbulent juncture for the Irish retail industry. Duncan joins me now to discuss his role and to share his thoughts on the current retail climate. Duncan, before we discuss this new position, you've had an illustrious career in the Irish retail sector, having worked with some of the biggest and best-known brands.
Yeah, I guess, look, it's ironic, isn't it? I'm sitting here as an Englishman having spent 24 years working with Irish retail brands. So I came across originally with M&S way back now and ran the store in Cork, moved up to Dublin after that and ran a food business for Marks and Spencer's for a short while. And then hopped across the road from Grafton Street into Brown Thomas. So I was general manager in Brown Thomas for a couple of years. And then the latter part of my career, before I took this role on, was running the Specsavers brand in Ireland and expanding that over the last 8 to 9 years, which has been, as you're probably aware, a phenomenal success and great fun to do. So it's, I know a lot about Irish retail. It's been fun. I've enjoyed it, and there's some great people in it, Karl.
Yeah, well, there's no doubting your credentials in the retail space, but what did you learn from your time in Marks and Spencer's, Brown Thomas and Specsavers?
There's probably sort of three things, or one thing under each of those. I would say M&S, it was about efficiency. M&S was a company that did things really efficiently. And I remember joining them. They talked about being one of the most efficient retailers in the world at that time. So it was efficiency for that one. I think for Brown Thomas, it was different. It was all about service. The iconic Brown Thomas service was legendary. It is legendary. And I thought I knew about service in my in the days of Marks and Spencer's, but I certainly learned a thing or two when I worked for Paul Kelly in Brown Thomas in Grafton Street. That's for sure. So that was probably the thing. With Brown Thomas. And then I suppose for the last 8 years with Specsavers, it's really been around relationships. So Specsavers is best way to describe it is it's a joint venture partner model, more like a franchise model. And the relationship that you have with business owners as you're leading the brand, particularly in Ireland, was the real nub of the success of Specsavers, and that's going to be what drives it forward in the future. So it's efficiency, service, and relationships, I think, are the three key things.
Now, that's very interesting. Now, specifically, what appealed to you about the role as Managing Director of Retail Excellence Ireland?
What an amazing time to take on a role in retail, Karl. It's been quite extraordinary. I think the way it was positioned, you just think there is no better time because there's so much that can be done. It's going to change so dramatically over the next few years, and I guess that was really the appeal. I mean, I'd spent a lot of time, as you know, as I just said before, around retail, and certainly the opportunity to take this role on from David, who's been doing it really, let's face it, for 25 years prior to me, and done a fantastic job. It just felt as though it was the pinnacle of my retail career. So that was the appeal, really.
And Duncan, as we look to the future, what do you think are the greatest changes that will impact the Irish retail industry over the next 5 to 10 years?
I think, there is inevitably the move to online. That's going to continue to happen. COVID-19 has just thrown the whole thing up in the air. It's just been, dramatic in terms of the change. I think what I would love to see, and I think this will happen, is that Irish retailers will get stronger. I just think there's been this move over the last few months towards shopping local and, giving something back to the community. And there are so many great Irish businesses out there, Irish retail businesses. And, we've been backing this campaign green thing through the Kilkenny shops, all around spend local and drive things local. And I really think there's some fantastic good Irish retail out there. And I think we'll see that come to the fore, Karl.
Now, you're taking over this role, as you say, at a time when the retail sector is facing its most daunting challenge, surviving the aftermath of COVID-19. But what are the members of Retail Excellence Ireland saying about the extent of the challenge facing them?
I think we've gone through this period of time of sort of shock, really, haven't we? We've gone through this period of time of being shut. And I think what's happening now is we've come out of the end of lockdown. We've come through June into July, and some retailers have actually had a really good July. Areas like homewares, groceries continue to be strong, and so forth. Others have had an absolute shocker, like the fashion and footwear industries, for example, have been well down. And I actually think retailers are a really adaptable bunch, and they're looking for the future, and they're going, what are the opportunities? And I think there are those opportunities coming up. And everybody I've spoken to so far is sort of shaking themselves down, really, and going, right, we've got to where we are. What does the future look like? How can we move forward? How can we avail of some of the things that are on offer to us through government? And how can we change our business model and move forward? And it's very much going to be a business model that is, bricks and mortar will still have its role to play. Online will have its role to play. The whole digital social media platform will have its role to play. And they're all exploring those avenues and those opportunities and seeing which one best suits them and what they can develop further. So, I actually think we've gone through the doom and gloom, and it's now about time to sort of dust ourselves down and reinvent and move forward.
And of course, many of our listeners will have seen the headline on the Irish Independent last week that read, "Retail bounced back in June as shoppers rushed out after lockdown."
Yeah, they will have done, and there was inevitability. It's very mixed around the country. So if you're in Dublin, they're saying that certainly Grafton Street, the footfall's been down around 50%. You start moving away from that. Waterford, Wexford, people shopping locally. Probably not so bad. I mean, I've been in Galway this week, and there are a lot of staycationers about. So there's been a bit of bounce back with people holidaying around Ireland, and those sectors that benefit from that, those retail sectors some retail sectors will have benefited from that. But look, it's pluses and minuses very much at the minute, Karl, and as I say, some will have benefited, some won't, and that's been the story of the summer so far, I think.
And Duncan, on your travels around the country, have you witnessed any innovations from retailers that you consider to be particularly impressive?
Look, generally, I mean, I was with Carrick Dunn today in Westport, and they're talking about their move to online selling. I think a lot of people that have set up websites to do e-commerce stuff, almost at the drop of a hat. They've availed of some of the subsidies that have been available, and they've just, they've maybe had a website, but they've started to sell online. I've heard of, coffee shops that have turned themselves into little food stores. Because they can't take the volume of customers as a restaurant or a coffee shop. They've just literally turned themselves into a food offer and put tables outside. I've seen that happening. So as I say, I think people have been very adaptable, and I think that will continue. People that have traditionally sold a lot of clothing that are now maybe selling more homeware. Those types of things are happening. So and we'll only see that continue, I think, as the year goes on.
And how has Retail Excellence Ireland adapted its offering to support its members during this critical time?
So traditionally, I think we've been networkers. We've tended to put retailers together with people that can support them. We've run events. We've done a lot of training and development. And I think, that's relied on people coming into a conference room and a meeting room and talking together. And of course, that's not happened. So, we've moved our offering very much online. We've been running a lot of e-commerce webinars with our members. We've got plans to do more webinars with bringing in some, really good retail speakers to talk to members and things like that. And then, of course, the other bit that we've found ourselves doing a lot of is, talking to government, picking up some of the messages, going back to our members, checking with them in terms of how these things are going to land, and then going back to government and giving some response. So we've very much been that sort of, catalyst for feeding information out from the centre, out from government into members and getting a response back. And that's been a lot of what we've been doing recently.
And while we've all witnessed and become accustomed to long queues outside of retail stores, surely such queues will be impractical during the winter months?
Yes, look, wasn't it novel for about 2 weeks back in June? Do you remember those days when the sun was shining, Karl?
I do.
That was great, wasn't it? We almost enjoyed lockdown at that point when we were first allowed out and we could queue outside the Woodies. Look, it's going to be a completely different story come October and November. When the weather's poor, queuing isn't going to be much fun. But do you know what? I've noticed there's less queuing going on at the moment. I think people have got used to it. I think retailers have got used to how many people they can let in. There's some great novel stuff going on. I think if you stand outside your local Tesco, you'll see a little counter of how many people are in that store, and then it turns green to let you in. When the numbers are at the right level. And I think retailers have got used to how many people can they sensibly manage with social distancing rules, and I think that's helped. But, the problem is going to come when we start moving from November into December into that Christmas peak. And that bit is the real uncertain bit. It's not so much what's going to happen, in October. It's that build up to Christmas, which is obviously crucial for retailers. That's going to be a major issue, I think, Carl.
I've seen a very good initiative that was deployed by one of the local authorities. They had installed click and collect parking bays in public car parks in the towns throughout that county. What else have you seen local government do across the country to be able to support retailers?
So the click and collect bit is really good, yeah. And anything that can be done to support that is welcome. There's the other bit which has happened, which is the pedestrianisation piece. Now, in some cases, that's supportive of retailers because, you're creating a better shopping environment. You're bringing customers in. They can sit at restaurants and so forth. And if they're doing that, they will inevitably then go and browse the shops and go in. And that's to be welcomed. Obviously, that needs to be offset with, can you actually get deliveries into shops and all of those types of things? What type of shopper is it bringing in and so on? So, initiatives like that are welcome, but welcomed in a cautious way. They've got to be done correctly and properly. But there's no doubt that things like click and collect, yes, very good, very useful. Anything where we're storing goods for customers, just putting their shopping to one side for them to collect later. Those types of initiatives can be applauded, and more of them.
And how would you assess the recently published July job stimulus from the retail sector's perspective?
Look, okay, I think would be the answer to that. I think there's certainly things that were of benefit. The 2% drop in the VAT rate. It's temporary. We'd love to see that more permanent. We've got one of the highest tax rates, or VAT tax rates in Europe. We need to see that drop further. The rates waiver is certainly something that our members have come back and said they're pleased with. The wage subsidy scheme being extended, that's of benefit, albeit there are still some issues associated with that. So generally speaking, a guarded welcome from us, but it needs to go further because, we have seen people shutting doors. We've seen the shutters coming down. So, we need to see this reversed. We need to see retailers being given every opportunity to develop their business, grow their business and retain people.
And what are your thoughts on the government's changes to the wage subsidy scheme?
So it's interesting, this one. I mean, the wage subsidy scheme to be welcomed. I think what I'm hearing from members, though, is that, particularly in those sectors that are starting to recover, we need almost a prorated view to this. So, most retailers, once we need something that says if you're still 5 or 6 or 7 or 10% down, that there's something in it for them. Because, at the moment, the bar is set pretty much too high. And, I can still see a situation where, good retailers are going to be letting people go simply because they don't qualify for that wage subsidy scheme in the future. And that's going to be a problem. And I think there needs to be a bit more of a pragmatic approach to this and a prorated approach going forward. And maybe that's something that can be picked up at the budget.
And of course, the Restart grant has increased to a maximum of €25,000. And there's no doubt that retailers, more than any other sector, will benefit from that. But has it gone high enough?
No, but it's not just the Restart grant. I think there's other things in there which have certainly helped and which our members are coming back to us on and ticking the box. And that's the grants for online. Retail Excellence members did benefit from the first round of funding for the Enterprise Island grants for taking businesses online. There was about half of our members, or half of the people that applied for it got that grant, and there's an additional $5.5 million that's been allocated at the July stimulus for online. So that's to be welcomed, and I think that's a big plus as far as retailers are concerned. So there's something in it, but in the July stimulus, but it needs to go further. It needs to be made a bit more permanent, I think.
So, Duncan, what additional supports do you think the sector will need to survive the coming months?
I think the biggest one that's coming back to us from our members at the moment is rent. Is work with landlords. We are still getting a lot of queries from our members who are going, I'm still faced with a rent bill for quarter two when I was shut. And frankly, not a lot of landlords are coming back and saying, okay, I'll defer the payment on that rent for 3 months, but you still owe it to me, in 3 months' time, and so on. That's simply not good enough. We've not been trading in these units for 3 months in many cases, and what needs to happen here is that we need to find some better way of working. And some of the better landlords, some of the ones that are engaging with retailers at the moment, are coming up with a solution which is either a turnover-based rental model, i.e. something whereby the retailer pays a percentage of turnover, or a significantly subsidised rent for a period of time. It's those types of things that will keep retailers going. And one of the requests for government is almost an arbitration service, a bit like the WRC, but for any disputes between landlords and retailer. Let's get around a table and try and find a solution. That's probably the biggest thing at the moment that we'd like to see the support put in place for retailers. And
it's a very practical solution. Now, finally, do you envisage that we will witness many retail closures and job losses in the sector over the next 12 months?
I think there's an inevitability that there will be some, and it would be stupid not to say that, Karl. I think that's going to happen. I mean, we've already seen, actually, interestingly, we've seen it come with a lot of the UK retailers. The Debenhams one is well known. Oasis Warehouse, that sort of those types of business, Cat Kits, and they've all gone. I think what we're going to see is that continue. I think the UK retailers will find it tough. I think we're going to see a lot of space emerging, particularly in shopping centres and major city centre shopping streets. But at the same time, I think we're going to see the emergence of shops in local areas. So, what's been really good over the last few months has been the emergence of the greengrocers and the butchers and the fishmongers and all of that sort of thing, which has happened locally. People have got used to that and used to shopping in their local community. And I think we're going to see a resurgence of local communities. And I think the problem is going to happen in city centres, and shopping centres. Those are not going to be the same again. It's going to be the local community where you're going to be doing your shopping.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Duncan Graham, the new Managing Director of Retail Excellence Ireland. And I would like to thank Duncan for joining us on this morning's show.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast.